Hey Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Zena Collins, who is an emotional intelligence trainer and coach. Zena, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's great to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. I know you got a very big title in which we're going to have to dive in at some point in time and really express what you actually do. I know our listeners are going to be listening for that. But before we actually get into that, could you just express to us a little bit more about your background, your cultural background, and where do you live now currently?
Okay, so I currently live in Maryland, Upper Marlborough, just outside DC. But I was born in Hackney, London, to parents from Montserrat, which is a island, a small island in the Caribbean.
You said
So-
Montserrat.
Montserrat, yes.
Oh, okay. Hers is a beautiful island over there.
It is a beautiful island. Do you know much about Montserrat?
My track coach back in high school, believe it or not, he was from there, and he
Oh,
used to
cool.
express a lot of stuff. And I forget Mr. Griffin. He was a very influential person in my life, and I was like, "What is this place?" and he would just show us on the map and express to us like another place in the Caribbean. Sometimes people only know certain places, but Montserrat is definitely a beautiful place.
Yeah, one of our biggest exports is Arrow, who wrote the song Hot, Hot, Hot.
Mhm.
So pretty famous for that. And they used to have a music studio there called Air Studios, which was founded by Sir George Martin, who was the producer of the Beatles. And so lots of people like Stevie Wonder, Elton John,
Okay.
and the Police, they recorded albums in that studio. So it's kind of famous for that as well. But just coming on this call, I was like, oh, I need to do a little bit more research on Montserrat, and was just looking at the history as well. So yeah, it's had
A
lots of
lot.
different cultures there. Sorry.
And I was gonna say a lot of the Caribbean islands do have a lot of history. That sometimes you just don't even know that it even exists because it's not really talked about. As much. But have you gone back recently or anything like that?
Yeah, well, from the age of like 5, my mum used to take me there every summer. So I used to go there a lot. And then my grandparents moved back from the UK to Montserrat when they retired and built a house there. So I used to go visit them as well. And then as I was older, I used to travel there a lot. And for a period of time, I was working and living in the Caribbean. So I had the opportunity
Okay.
to go there quite a bit during that period as well.
And
So
did you lived in London as well too?
So yeah, born and raised in London, lived in London, and then spent some time working in Bermuda, and then spent some time working in the Cayman Islands and across other islands like Bermuda, Bahamas, British Virgin Islands as well. So while I was there, it was a great opportunity to go and then travel to some of the other Caribbean islands and see them as well.
Another beautiful place. Bermuda is only about like an hour and a half away from New York or something. And
Yeah.
my uncle's from there, and I used to be like, it's only an hour and a half. Like, okay, what? But it is
I
very
know, right? A
expensive.
different world, an hour and a half away.
Yes, for real. Like you'd be surprised, to hop on a flight an hour and a half. That's like a drive in a car going somewhere. But it seems that you definitely had a lot of world traveling going on in your career and stuff. Like, what's one of the most beautiful places you've been to?
Um, a lot of them are just beautiful in different ways. So Montserrat is a gorgeous island. It's mountainous, it's green, it's rich in terms of natural environment and ecosystems. Bermuda is beautiful in terms of the layout, how the land is structured and the architecture. I mean, St. Lucia is gorgeous.
Mm,
Piton,
mm-hmm.
Jamaica
Castro,
has so
the
many different
pitons,
terrains in
yes.
it. I mean, the islands are all, the Caribbean is one of my favorite places to travel. And so the islands all have their own kind of unique beauty, like the Grenadines, St. Vincent, they all have something special about them. And then like even coming to the States and the diversity of the land in the States. So going to California, experiencing that side of the world, the Grand Canyon, like there's just I'm into like natural beauty. So there are like just loads of different pockets of natural beauty all across the continent. So
and you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. Your bio is also like kind of like an image, a replica of you're traveling. Your bio has a wide range of experiences, just like the experiences you have across the world traveling. What did you want to do before you became a professional?
I think I was very similar to any young child. Like you see something, and you experience something, and you're like, oh yeah, this is it. So I think my first desires was to be a ballerina. So I did ballet when I was very young, or a journalist. And then as I got older, I was interested in architecture because when I went to Montserrat at a young age, there were lots of Black architects there, and they had like beautiful houses. And so I think that inspired me at that time. And then later on, I had an interest in TV, and loved the idea of being able to create my own stories and see more representation of people that look like me on TV. So that was one of the things that drove me to want to produce content and become a TV producer.
Now, you're an expert in emotional intelligence. I know a lot of our audience members are questioning right now. What exactly is that?
Good question. Good question. So there's a lot of information out there and people are confused with what EI is and what EQ is. But EI, emotional intelligence, was developed in like 1990 by two gentlemen called Salovey and Meyer, who coined the term to define how people can practically apply the use of their emotions to inform their actions. And how you use your emotions to inform your actions helps you to achieve better outcomes in situations. So they recognized it as an intelligence, and rather than seeing it as a soft set of skills that are related to personality, they saw it as hard skills that enable you to identify emotions as data and then use that data to help you think and make more informed decisions.
Now, on a day-to-day, what does your job look like?
So I've been able to kind of apply the emotional intelligence practice to lots of different roles that I have. So I'm what I've been told the young people call it a slashy. So even though I do emotional intelligence training and coaching, I use those skills in change management consulting. I produce projects as well. So my days can vary, but typically it's looking at different ways to help people to get better outcomes of whatever work we're doing. So, for example, this week I was working with a company that specializes in orchestral performances, and they are trying to improve the amount of diversity they have in their organization in terms of the people, the members of orchestras, the type of programming they have. And so equipping their leadership teams and their orchestra teams to identify some of their sort of biases and some of the challenges they have with working with diverse teams. A lot of the activity I do is around designing workshops and activities to help them to recognize those challenges and work through them.
Okay. That obviously kind of gives a real understanding of that. Now, before we speak about your business, I want to go over, like, I know you have like 20 years of experience in how your career, your journey started off. Like, what was the first job that you had? And like, what was some of the experiences that you learned to kind of that catapult you into where you are today?
My first professional job out of school was working as a junior editorial assistant at a paper called The Voice newspaper. It's Britain's oldest Black newspaper. So this last year, it's been running for 40 years. And it was one of those experiences where I realized how it shaped my view of the world in the future, because most of the people at that paper were Black. And so I saw people in, leadership positions who were Black, and we were, shaping the narrative in terms of telling stories about Black people's experience being told by Black people, which weren't being told in the mainstream. So it kind of gave me a lens on the world when I left there, and I was like, wow, it's only after I left I realized how special it was to be in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Now, you started your career working. You mentioned about publishing. You said television. I also seen that you were at Ernest and Young,
Yeah.
and that's like a completely different industry. Like, how challenging was it for you to go into that world of Ernest and Young?
Well, it was a massive culture shock. So imagine starting your career in a Black newspaper where you can be, as the phrase they use now, your authentic self. And you see diversity of different types of Black people in this organization working at various different levels. And then you go into an organization where you don't see many people that look like you. And you work with lots of people who haven't worked with people who look like you. And so their view of the world and their view of you is kind of very different to what you've experienced. So it was a big culture shock, but at the same time, it was exciting because it was such an impressive organization, and you had this sense of, oh my goodness, I've managed to get in.
Yes, that is true.
And so it was a combination of this feeling of, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Getting into this organization, it kind of gave you I guess a sense of importance in that, in being able to be part of that that type of world. But at the same time, those values that you get when you're younger, when you're told you've got to work, twice or three times as hard as people that don't look like you, all of that imposter syndrome starts to kick in. And so it's managing all of those feelings as you're trying to get on in that type of organization.
Now, you've worked in like finance. I know publishing, television, like altogether, like what is the ultimate lesson that you learned working in so many different industries?
That your success is based on two things: you and your mindset, and the people around you who are you're able to learn from, grow with, and also support and develop. So it doesn't matter what industry it is, it's all about people. And it's also about having the right systems, or knowing, or having the knowledge about how to use those systems and processes, and knowing how to communicate in order to get on in those organizations. I say those are fundamentals. Once you're able to get those fundamentals, you can learn everything else in terms of how an organization works, how an industry works. But the things that you need to figure out quite early on is how do you get on with diverse range of people? How do you make yourself understood? How do you get access to the knowledge that you need in order to be in the know? So those things are kind of the consistent things that have been across my career.
I like how you said the mindset is a very important thing. A lot of our guests previously had said the same thing. Something that has helped them incline up that ladder in their journey was their mindset, and then having like a good tight circle of people around them, a diverse group of people around them to help them understand several different things about themselves and about the companies that they work for. So I'm glad that you have kind of also highlighted that as well too. Now, I know as a wondering now, as a Black woman, who worked in corporate, I know this is a big thing right now. In your opinion, what is the biggest misconception that you feel most companies don't get about the importance about employee resource groups?
It comes back to people again. Like, relationships are the bedrock of most businesses, and people gravitate a lot of the times to people they have something in common with, or there is a mutual understanding, or there's a cultural resonance. And so when you have an employee resource group in your organization, it's just another resource for you to be able to increase your employees' engagement and make them feel psychologically safe at work. And when people feel safe at work, they perform better.
Sure.
They build relationships, they learn more easily, they share, they have a desire to be understood, understand other people, and be of service. And in doing all of that, it raises your brand, and it also gives you access to, opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily get if you didn't have people who felt safe and comfortable and were able to freely make those relationships inside and outside of your organization.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very well said on that. I know that something that when I was reading over the bio, I noticed emotional math. I know that was something you have created.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit more about that? And
Sure.
tell us about, how did that come about?
So I was trained in 2010 by David Caruso, who was one of the authors of the MSCEIT emotional intelligence test, which stands for like Meyer, Salovey, Caruso. And I took that course at that time because I was struggling to find a framework that would be useful to navigate kind of this new world that I was in, which was like this new corporate world. And I was getting a lot stressed, I was getting anxious a lot of the times. I didn't have the tools to be able to navigate it. And so it really gave me a framework to think about, how I navigate that space and how I create my own boundaries and also get better outcomes, essentially, in everything I was doing. And so doing that course, using those skills myself, running a employee resource group, and seeing the challenges of other people that were similar to mine. Then also, I had lots of side hustles as well, and friends who had side hustles, and saw their entrepreneurial journey and recognized that a lot of the times it was the emotions that got in the way, the mindset that got in the way of them being able to understand what skills they needed, understand where their gaps were. And so I was like, what if we mixed this emotional intelligence model with these business skills that I've gained and these insights to how businesses run and operate? And then I put a cultural twist on it in terms of, I understand because I am a minority in many corporate spaces or professional spaces. What if I kind of use my cultural lens to you build empathy into that model? So it became a program that I tested on a few friends, and I started to see they were able to take steps to build these businesses and then get results. So I was like, oh, there's a methodology in this. So I realized, there's actually 5 steps that I can map out using this emotional intelligence approach, using my cultural intelligence in terms of the barriers that we come up against, the emotional blocks that we come up against, and then using, the practical business tools and frameworks that I've been able to develop and learn during my professional career, and just package it up in a easy methodology that I then kind of hold people's hand through. So ultimately, it's just a way to help people to GSD, as I say, get shit done.
Okay. Break it down. Come on, break it down. Break it down. Now, what are 2 ways you think being emotionally intelligent can help somebody at work? Like, I know this, I'm assuming there's obviously several different ways. Obviously, you expressed a few of them, but like, what are like the 2 main ones you think?
So stress and anxiety. So coming into these spaces where you don't feel psychologically safe, or you feel like you don't belong there, imposter syndrome, all of these things that we experience in spaces that are unfamiliar or don't feel comfortable. Emotional intelligence gives you a framework to basically mindfully work through the feelings that you're feeling. So you can compartmentalize them and make decisions that are informed by using that data of how you feel to then ask the right questions, to then think about what is the best steps for me to take in this situation to get the best outcome based on my bigger plan, on my bigger goal. And then the second piece is it helps you to identify opportunities and ask the right questions and build relationships that can help support your progression. So it enables you to read people better, be able to match that information with maybe making the right decision based on being able to think about what if analysis in terms of what if I do this, what would the potential outcome be? What if I do that, what would the potential outcome be? So you take a pause to basically do your own kind of self-analysis. And then once you've done that, then you can make a decision in terms of what move can I take. But it's almost like a mental, emotional chess that you have a framework to play in your mind before you take a step. But like with everything, sometimes we have the tools, but we don't use them. So the reason why I did the course was because I needed the tool, but once I got them, they only work when you use them. And so that's the key.
That is true.
That's the key.
That is true.
Yeah.
Now, our audience are mostly immigrants. They usually tell us that they feel misunderstood and sometimes underestimated at work. How could they use that as a secret weapon?
Good question. There's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, in terms of being underestimated can sometimes be a superpower. Because in a sense, you're always going to be overachieving. But I think the secret weapon of being misunderstood and underestimated is it gives you a huge capacity for empathy. And empathy is a powerful relationship tool. And in the workplace, which is changing, increasingly becoming more and more diverse, empathy is going to be, and it is a critical tool to be able to understand where different people are coming from, even when you haven't walked in their shoes or don't have that experience. It also gives you the ability to have the cultural intelligence to see opportunities and solutions to problems where other people might not see them, because you've got these lenses of all of these different experiences. And because you're sometimes underestimated and misunderstood, you've had to come up with more solutions to navigate those challenges. So your ability to think on your feet quicker and come up with solutions sometimes is much stronger than others, and also seeing opportunities where other people don't in business. So, for example, there's trends where we see them way before the mainstream see them, because we're experiencing them, we're solving problems that no one else is trying to solve. So I worked with a lady who launched something called World Afro Day, when she was recognizing that young girls and people at work were being discriminated because of wearing their hair natural. And that was kind of before it became like a big, massive movement. So out of that became all of these, business opportunities for people who were catering to an audience that weren't typically catered to. Similarly, my husband and I launching a CMOS business, and because we're passionate about wellness, nature, and CMOS is widely used in the Caribbean.
And
so
that is true.
That is true. Again, that's an opportunity, and I'm sure there's lots of people who can make reference to things that are their day-to-day that now have become like big trends in mainstream, like shea butter and all of these other things that people were culturally using that weren't considered as mainstream, but now they are. So I think if you can channel that energy of feeling misunderstood and underestimated into recognizing the things that other people can't see, and then packaging that up as solutions to problems, then you're always going to be
in business.
Yeah. Thank you. Exactly that. And you always be able to find another way to make it.
Mhm. You'll always find another way to kind of create another business off of that, kind of like
Right.
pushing because, like I think you're definitely onto something when you're saying that because, if you could find that niche or you could find that issue, that problem that people are facing, you say, you know what, I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna find a solution. I'm not just gonna create something. I'm gonna create something that's gonna help with the solution. And then it just adds on. People just mind, like you said, the CMOS thing. I know like 90 something minerals are in it. I know it's something very heavily used in the Caribbean. And, it wasn't mainstream at one point, but now it is. That's then now becomes something very lucrative for the Caribbean community. Um, and the Caribbeans, get to, harvest that and hopefully make it, and people can make a significant business out of that.
Yeah, as long as we have the right infrastructure, and
That's correct.
that's the biggest challenge is actually having the right infrastructure.
And those resources and those tools are always essential, but you got to know how to use them. Now, from my understanding, I know that you're going to be partnering with Zaka. I mean, creating some workshops.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Ooh, yes, yes, yes. That's going to be a very big component here at Zaka for
Mm.
our audience members, the workshops. Now, could you talk to us a little bit more about some of the workshops you're developing and what are the audience going to expect from it?
They can expect a framework and a toolkit to figure out how to create better outcomes in sort of everyday work situations, whether that's you being an introvert at work and trying to build your presentation skills in a way that you are impactful, um, whether it's managing being the only one in the room or the one of a few minorities in your organization. How can you turn that into a secret weapon, as you talked about previously? So it's really about how do you apply this framework to everyday situations you find yourself in at work and break it down into manageable packets so that you can understand what's happening and navigate that situation better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to those workshops. I know a lot of the audience members will be as well too when that is open to them. Now, when you look at your career, what I'm saying, you've been all around the world. You've traveled a lot and worked in several different companies, corporate, owning your own business. Man, what is the biggest challenge you've faced in your career so far, and how did you overcome it?
I'm just thinking about that because, once you're over the challenge, you have a new challenge that always
That is,
feels bigger than the
yep.
one that was before. So I guess this is the
Oh
benefits
man.
of constantly growing and being a student of life. So I feel like my biggest challenge is most really yet to come. But I think imposter syndrome is an ongoing journey for me, as I'm sure it is with everybody. As you overcome one thing, you get into another situation where you feel you might not have the capabilities or capacity to uh, deliver.
Mhm.
And so I think running a employee resource group at a time in early 2000s or mid 2000s when they weren't common and there was a lot of resistance, and people saw those networks as essentially almost like a radical group of people, rather than all the things I described earlier in terms of essentially just an opportunity to create a psychologically safe space for people who are minorities in organization who can also find ways to add value to the organization by building relationships and improving employee retention and engagement, and I guess the responses of fear that I experienced from people who just didn't understand it and couldn't see why people just didn't want to assimilate and get on and not complain. So I think that was a challenge um, to manage my emotions in that situation and at the same time support other people who are going through it as well as demonstrate the value that we could add. So really the emotional intelligence toolkit was like critical at that time in my life to manage the emotions that I was going through during that time. So I think My biggest challenge is yet to come, and knowing that I've overcome a number of challenges in my career just makes me realize that
You're prepped and ready for the next one.
I'm prepped and ready for the next one. Prepped and
You
ready.
are prepped and ready for the next one. Come on now. Come on.
Right.
Now, if we're thinking about those challenges and like what's like some of those biggest challenges in your career, but like what is one of the most proudest moments for you?
Again, I mean, my answers are like, I feel more, they sound mostly more philosophical than anything else, but I feel like it's my ability to transfer skills and knowledge to others. So I'm most proud of when I see someone who's gone through the emotional maths process come out and achieve what they wanted to achieve. So, and
Mm,
they visualize where they want to be at the start of the process. They go through emotional intelligence testing and coaching, and then we map it out systematically in terms of what are the steps they want to take to get from that vision to delivering on that goal. And so every time I see that work and every time I see people win, those are my proudest moments in terms of my professional life. So those, yeah, those are the things I'm proud of, is when I've been of service to others and I can see that what I've given and what I've done has been of value. So those are things that I'm proud of.
that's always a big thing, when I always say, especially when I'm working with artists, right? I always say to artists, in general, like you're not an artist unless you give back, right? And I think that all of the information and knowledge that you have gained over the many years from the various different careers you've worked in, um, this this new venture that you're in a sense, right? It now is something where you're like, let me pass that on to somebody else. And I think that is a very beautiful thing to say, where you love to watch the start and finish, and not even just the finish of someone's journey, but like that them reaching that place that they wanted to be at, right? And sometimes they just can't do it because they just don't have the tools and the resources. And since you have those, you're able now to jump in and say, hey, look, I got you. Let me help
That's
you out. And
that,
that's beautiful.
that's for me, that we made one of the businesses that I set up with a colleague friend of mine, called Niche on Demand, was to support Black creators, and we created a film called Finding Sherpas, a short film, and the premise of that was based on a gentleman called Richard Addison, and it was really saying that everybody needs a Sherpa in their life, and so Sherpas are people who help people up the mountain in the
Hmm.
Himalayas, and so it's a
Hmm.
metaphor for people who help you to get to the summit of your career. And so that ultimately is what I want my legacy to be, in terms of that there are loads of people who are looking down from the top of the mountain and saying that, I played a small role to help them to get to that point. And so those are my proudest moments. And I think, working in corporate at a time where there was emphasis on people being career women, and I mean there still is today, and the amount of energy that sometimes you put into those jobs means that you neglect other areas of your life. So I'm lucky to have bonus children in my marriage, but I never had my own children. And I think that if I was to do things again in terms of my professional career, hopefully I would apply my emotional intelligence. And this wouldn't be necessary for everybody, because everybody wants different things, to think about how do I compartmentalize work better so I can have that balance to be able to potentially have a family earlier on in life. So I think that this whole idea of being a Sherpa and being able to get to your end, to a stage in your career where you're able to say that there's certain things I might not be able to have in my life, or there's certain things that I've learned in my life that I might be able to do differently, and I've got the opportunity now to share that perspective with someone at a stage in their life where it might be a turning point for them to think about doing something differently. So that's just one example of kind of many things I think it's helpful for us to be kind of honest and open about, in terms of the choices we make when we're thinking about our professional career and where we place that in the pyramid of our life.
I do like how you put the whole thing about the shepherd. I think that's a great analogy, of a shepherd, you know, guiding those sheep up the mountain.
Oh,
And
Sherpa. Sherpa. It's Sherpa. So Sherpa. Yeah.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes. So
Absolutely.
that analogy, it's a very well put together where, an individual needs those types of mentors and coaches in their lives. A lot of the guests have said a lot of their success has come from their mentors and their coaches who have helped them in a small aspect of their life, because their life is so great, right? They're like in this time frame of my life, this person came in and helped me
Mhm.
understand this, which in turn helped me understand how to really do this at this capacity. And it's like that one little thing sometimes can make a massive difference in someone's performance, their growth, and like obviously their future career and where they want to go. So I greatly appreciate you doing that. And it's helping a lot of people reach their true potential because sometimes in life, people never do. And individuals like yourself, you see a lot of potential in people and you want people to reach their goals. So thank you so much for just being so open and loving, to be honest with you, because you don't meet a lot of people like that.
Yeah, and I guess I've been fortunate to have people who've done the same for me in various different ways. And as I was saying to a friend earlier today, like that success isn't necessarily always reaching your end goal. It's being able to be in a position to hand on some type of baton to somebody else. And when you think of our history and where we've come from, it's going to be a while before we get to this, place of complete equality. But if we think of it more of a marathon and that we're passing batons, then I think it enables us to think about how we run the race slightly differently.
Mm, okay. Well, Zena, I want to thank you again for your time being on the show and expressing to us about your journey, the things you have gone through, and the people, the individuals that you have helped. They're blessed to have you in their lives. I'm looking forward to those workshops now that you're going to be dropping
I'm
on the
expecting
Zach.
to see you on them, or well, maybe not see you on them, but like hear that you've watched them. So I'm gonna hold you
Oh,
to that, Paul.
come on now. I'm gonna jump in there now. I'm gonna jump in there. Come on, Zaka, all day. But I just want to say thank you again for just being on the show and just expressing and sharing all this information with us. And I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Zena, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast.